Whether you're a seasoned vet of the payments industry or a brand new rookie who just heard the term dual pricing for the first time, you're in the right place. This is the only podcast that shares the strategies and stories behind selling merchant services, all from the perspective of those on the front lines. Welcome to AgentFirst. Hey guys, it's Jon. We'll get to the episode here in just a second, but I wanted to take care of some super fancy and technical podcast stuff, like actually introducing the person that we're about to hear from. We talked in this episode with Chad Rapper, who is the president of True North Payment Solutions, and we never really said that in the episode. I promise we'll get better at that as we keep going. But this is a great conversation with Chad, and this is only part one. We had such a good conversation, we split it into 2 episodes. So listen to part 1 today, and when the next episode comes out, you'll be able to hear the second part of our interview with Chad Rapper. All right, welcome back to AgentFirst. I'm Jon, he's Justin, and we have another guest today who we'll introduce in just a second. If you haven't listened before, we had an agent named Ira Cornelius with us previously, and he told us his story, and that went so well that we figured, well, let's do it again. Let's have another agent on. Candidly, you can only listen to Justin and I so much, so it's nice to have
agree with that.
Another person on. So our guest today, and I'll let him tell kind of his story, but our guest today is Chad Rapper. And Chad's a guy that I really just met a couple of months ago. Yep. And so I'm sometimes when we do these interviews, I know a lot of what they're going to say, and I'm trying to, Justin and I are trying to help guide them. This one is really us getting to know Chad, because we've only known each other, or I've only known you for a couple of months.
True.
And so welcome. I know you're based in the Chicago area.
Beautiful Chicago, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think a great place to start is really just tell us about kind of how'd you get started in sales generally, and then how'd you get started in payment sales, and maybe even put some context around like how long have you been in the industry, because I know that number is larger than some folks.
Sure.
Have. Yeah.
Oh, you're revealing your age, Chad.
No. Chad started when he was in kindergarten.
Yeah,
that's
right. So, prodigy. Only 25 now. So I appreciate it. So my sales journey started pretty young. I guess you could say being a waiter, you're trying to upgrade the menu or upgrade people's orders and whatnot. And it was fun interacting with people, because as a waiter, your attitude certainly contributes to how good your tip's going to be.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So if you come in, you got a crappy attitude and you're just really sluggish, I'm not going to be a big tipper, Right. But if I make your experience really fun and you're enjoying it, I'm suggesting things you might not have before, generally you're going to get a big tip. And I love that challenge. One restaurant I worked at called Eduardo's, I know at the end of the night, they had these gigantic chocolate chip cookies that were, for dessert. And we'd always throw them out, which was a huge waste. So at the end of the night, my boss would let me just take them and give them away to the tables for free. And it was just part of what I did, and the tips were phenomenal. Yeah. Because something as small as giving a chocolate chip cookie gets people excited and makes them really happy. So that's when I got the first taste of, how you interact with people and how you treat people can have a direct impact on the money you make.
Sure.
I went to school a little bit at a community college in Palatine, Illinois, called Harper College. And I enjoyed it, but I was never really a school person. I knew sales of some sort was going to be my gig, just because I love the human interaction. I love that challenge of making someone happy and being able to reap those rewards of doing a good job. So around that time, this was probably early 90s, 93, 94, I started getting into sales more heavily. I went to real estate school, became a realtor, and sold for a few years. Enjoyed that a lot, but it extremely competitive. Not that our industry isn't, but the dishonesty in that industry. If your house is only worth $250,000, well, you want $300,000 because you have the industrial nails in your house,
right.
And there's 10 realtors lined up that'll say, Jon, I can get you that $300,000. I couldn't do that because I know your house isn't worth that. And if I price you that range, I've now priced you out of the market. People are looking for $225,000, $250,000 will never see your house.
Yeah.
And a lot of these owners, it's very emotional. They want to hear what they want to hear. And I just wasn't into that. I was doing that, and I was also doing high-end furniture sales at do you guys remember Marshall Field's?
Yeah.
Chicago.
Oh, wow.
They had a place called Marshall Field's Home Store, and I worked there for a while. And it was great. I loved it. Good money, good people. Same thing. Human interaction. You get to really kind of shine in helping people. And if you're honest and you do a good job, they buy from you. We've all heard people buy from people they like.
That's right.
So I did that for a while, and then one day a girl came in who I went to high school with, and this was a long time ago. So I think between the two of us, when we talk about it now, we don't remember if it was planned, like if she was coming in specifically to see me, and I don't think she was, and she doesn't think so either. But she came in, I saw her, she wasn't working with anyone, grabbed her, started talking. Now back then, I was younger, wasn't making a fortune. The money was decent, what I was used to making,
Sure.
but I wasn't making money, right? And she was doing great. And she had been in this credit card world. She did something with Visa and MasterCard, didn't really understand what. She was buying like a ton of furniture. I'm going, God, I can't even afford bedding. And she's like dropping all the serious change. So we sat down and we're talking. I'm like, all right, so what exactly do you do? And she started explaining the whole Visa MasterCard thing and how it works. And she goes out and talks to merchants. And I thought, my God, that's what I do. I mean, that's what I would love. I love that. And she was like, we're hiring in the Chicago market. And at the time, she was working for Midwest Payment Systems, which was owned by Fifth Third.
Okay.
Fifth Third didn't have a presence in Chicago yet. So this was just, they had an office off Cumberland and 90 in the city, towards the city. And she said, we're hiring. She's like, do you have a resume? I said, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely did not.
Yeah, of course not.
No resume.
But that's the answer that every sales guy gives.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes, of course I do.
For sure I do. So I put one together, and I would kill to see what it looks like today.
Right? I can imagine.
I mean, it was just slop. But I got the interview, and I remember going to the office, and inside the office where they were interviewing me, they also had ATM machines, I guess they use for training.
Okay.
And then I started panicking, like, why are there ATMs here? I don't know anything about ATMs. She never said anything about ATMs. And it didn't have anything to do with ATMs. That they did ATM stuff out of that office, but it wasn't our division. So we're talking. Interview, I think I'm a pretty good interviewer. I'm not a super shy person, which is a spoiler alert. No comment. So interview went great. I got the job. I was excited. And then they ended up having me drive to Cincinnati, which is where Fifth Third was located.
Right.
Went to Cincinnati. They put me up in this corporate apartment for several days. And I was like, king of the castle.
Right.
King of the castle. I'm a big deal. Because I'm this tattooed punk rock kid who never had much aspirations. I had a rough upbringing, so I just didn't have a lot of high goals.
Sure.
Your mind is set a certain way. So here I am in this beautiful corporate apartment. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. Mind you, I still know nothing about the industry.
Right.
Nothing. So I go to corporate, which is like this gigantic skyscraper in the middle of Cincinnati, and they stick me in this room with this guy to talk about interchange. Now, I'm not a math whiz. Thank God for my wonderful, beautiful wife who is, and she can help my son with math because he's in advanced math, and I stopped in like 8th grade. I couldn't help him with anything. So he starts talking about interchange and all, and I swear to God, blood's dripping from one ear while a teardrop's coming down my cheek. And I'm just thinking to myself, what did I get myself into?
Right.
We're up high, in a big skyscraper. He's got a window. I'm thinking, if I go fast enough, I can make it through that window. Because that was literally, I'm not kidding. It was an absolute panic because I had no idea what he was talking about.
Sure.
Like, the training was great if you understand math. You understand what the hell a basis point and like interchange is. I don't know what IRF is. I don't know what corporate. I don't know any of this stuff. Yeah. So slight panic. Eventually, obviously, got the hang of it, and that was my beginning to
Wow.
this crazy industry.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know if you know, I actually came from real estate prior to the credit card processing world. And there's a saying you talked about earlier about, people promising things to homeowners that are not real. There was a saying, I don't know if you've heard, that is you always want to be the first girlfriend, the second wife, and the third realtor, because they've realized their house is actually worth by the time you're the third guy they've hired. Yeah, that reminds me a lot of it, and a very common theme that we hear from not only our past guests but also myself is that no interest in school whatsoever. Like that common
Sure.
theme there for sure.
Yeah.
Well, John.
It's funny because I do think there's something there, right?
Yeah.
That the, whether it's Ira talked about, having ADHD and that being common sometimes in people that succeed in business, but that idea of at some point sitting in an academic setting and saying, I want to succeed, but I don't know if this is the place that I want to succeed, right? Or with this set of rules or whatever that thing is. So you made it through without jumping out of the skyscraper,
I didn't
which is
jump out of
good
the
because I was
skyscraper,
worried there for a minute.
Congrats.
Did you go right into kind of starting to set appointments and book deals, or was there a little bit more of a transition time?
So a little bit of transition time. So first I have to give props to Angela. That's my friend. We went to high school together. She's started her own company. We're still great friends to this day. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful person. So thank you, Angela. I give her props for all of this. So yeah, there was a little bit of a transition of just learning some of the basics. There was a girl they hooked me up with who was very successful with the company, and I would go out with her, but she was like super aggressive, and that's not my style. Like I'm not, you don't want to do this, I remember us going out one time with a merchant or to a merchant, and the merchant didn't want to talk, and she's like, you don't want to save money? I'm like, ew, that's not how you do it. But for whatever reason, for her, it worked because she was very successful, but I don't know what kind of attrition she would have. But anyways, so with her, I spent some time with her. And then I remember booking my first appointment myself. It was a framing company in Chicago. They do $1 million plus a year. And, I thought that was big. And everyone else was impressed because, I had nothing to measure it by.
Sure.
And I remember we got them. And, back then the comp plan was a whole lot different than it is these days. Still wasn't making a ton of money. And what was interesting back then is there was no one needed to turn in statements. They would pay you partially based off what you wrote that account as.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I remember there was a good stretch where I'm like, why am I not making the money that the people around me are making? Like, I don't get it.
Because you weren't adding the extra zeros.
That is exact. And I found out later because then I'm assuming it started hurting their business and Fifth Third started cracking down.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But yeah, someone was saying, Pete's hot dog stand put down, they do $6 million a year.
A lot of hot
and
dogs.
there's a lot of hot dogs.
Yeah.
And my mind didn't go there. Let's game the system and let's fake the numbers. So eventually they cracked down on that, and you had to turn in statements to verify the volume you're getting paid on, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Didn't impact me because that was just what I was used to doing, because I just thought, why would I put in fake numbers? It just never crossed my mind, thank God.
You and your damn honesty.
I know, piece of crap.
How dare you?
So yes.
So you booked your first deal.
Yep.
Did it, did you start to feel some momentum coming after that, or was it still kind of just that grind that we hear people talk about?
The grind is always there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The grind is always there, and you you're nervous. You feel insecure. And then eventually you realize your little bit of knowledge is more than most merchants know. And that's not a hit against merchants. Just there's nothing, when you start a business, there's no credit card processing for dummies.
Sure.
There's no booklet that you just read and suddenly you understand that
We should write one.
you're getting interchange. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's called the internet now,
Right,
but at the
exactly.
time, yes.
At the time, yeah, not so much. So yeah, it became more comfortable, and then I was able to, talk to businesses. And this tells you how long ago it was. I did a lot of my business by faxing businesses.
Yeah.
I worked heavily with what was called CABDA at the time, Chicago Area Bike Dealers Association. And I would just put this flyer together and fax it to businesses, bike stores. And I had most of the bike stores in Chicago at one point. Angela and I did that together.
Wow.
We would go out to Vegas for the big Interbike show. And it was a lot of fun. So yeah, the momentum finally started. But it was always a grind. You got to stay on top of it. And that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of people coming into this industry is either they come from another industry and they think they're going to be rock stars because they were a rock star in that industry.
Yep.
Rarely have I seen that convert.
Okay.
So you talked about earlier, rough upbringing, punk rock kid. And I think a lot of times our upbringing definitely helps mold us into the type of, careers we have, or not type of career, but how we operate in that career. Maybe talk a little more to that. Like, how did that help you become the type of salesperson you were, overcome adversity, or what have you? Because I'm sure that plays a big part into that.
For sure. I think when you don't have very high expectations put on you, it's easy to go one of two directions. You either fall by the wayside and you end up doing some job you don't want to do just to survive. And I didn't want that for myself. Or you rise to the occasion and you look adversity in the face and you basically punch it in the eye. And so I remember It was probably around, so I got in the industry, I guess I should start with that. It was around 1998.
Okay.
I think is when I started.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
I know. And
I'm doing the math in my head. So 25 years,
yeah,
right?
25 years, yeah.
Just that 20-year rule.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So I remember taking like time away from a lot of social activities, like going to like see bands play. That is something I'm really passionate about, and music, and just really focusing on like what can I do to make myself and my career better? Because I had a lot of people around me that maybe weren't in great positions and really didn't strive for more. And I didn't want that. If that's good for them, God bless them. But that's not what I wanted for myself. So I took a little bit of time away from all of that and just kind of focused on what do I have to do to get to that next level? Because I understood this industry is a great vehicle to being able, to make a really good living. And that's not something I ever fathomed before. I talk about, we might have talked, I think we talked about this in the office the other day, where when I first started with Fifth Third, they give you this little like base for like the first 15 weeks, right? And I think they offered me like, maybe it was 20,000, being paid as if you're making 20,000 a year, because there's going to be commissions at the end of that. And then I bumped them up to 30 and they agreed to it. And I just thought, oh my God, 30,000.
How
Am I going to buy a Lambo? Am I going to buy a Ferrari? What am I going to buy? So that was kind of funny, but it just felt good that I've got this potential, this job that could be a great vehicle to, being able to accomplish things I never fathomed. And it's been a hell of a ride. It's been a lot of fun.
So I know, because I do know a little bit of your story. So talk about kind of the transition from regional processor to some of the national players. Sure. And kind of how things changed and how your career progressed with those moves.
Great question. So Fifth Third, I was there for probably, I think it was like 6 years.
Okay.
I got my start, got my feet wet, learned a whole lot. They were just doing bundled pricing back then, like Interchange Plus was really for the big guys, and I didn't know anything about it.
Hilarious.
So eventually I left and had an opportunity with Heartland. And this was kind of the heyday of Heartland when Heartland was really focused on the reps. And I remember like looking at the company, being impressed, and I sent Bob Carr an email. And, Bob Carr is obviously the owner of Heartland, and first thing next morning, I had a long email back from him. Mm-hmm. And I was really impressed because, here's a big company. I'm nobody, and he owes me nothing. And I did not expect a return. My message to him wasn't one where I was like, hey, respond to me. I was just letting him know I'm impressed with the company. I like what I see. I'm looking forward to the opportunity. And a very long, detailed email back to me, and that really impressed me. So I decided to jump ship, and I went to Heartland. Much different structure, because now with Heartland, you're full commission. Mm-hmm. You're making your residuals, and that was scary to me because I didn't have some big nest egg saved up. So it was kind of like sink or swim. And I think, again, you get put in that kind of situation, there's only two directions, up or down. Yeah. And I wanted it to be up. So I really kind of poured myself into it, had some good success early on, ended up becoming a territory manager, which then led to becoming a division manager. And, yeah, it was a good experience. And then, they went public. And then, unfortunately, the focus started becoming, it felt like solely on the shareholders and not so much the reps. And that's the focus they had on the reps is what I think attracted a lot of us and made us love the company, is that we felt like we were something, like we mattered. And then once they went public, it was a very different vibe.
What was the transition from being a relationship manager, an RM, right, to a TM and eventually a DM? Did that change kind of your perspective on things, having people that you were in theory responsible for now, or that you were leading?
Yeah, for sure. There was something really exciting about getting to help someone get to a level of success. Because, I'm not unique to the industry by any means. There's other people that are in very similar situations and sometimes worse situations. And helping someone get to the point where they're making an income they never thought they could feels really good.
Right.
Someone comes to you and, hey, I just bought my first house, and you were a part of that. I mean, that feels better than most paychecks, I have to admit. And it's because that's got a lifelong impact. So that part was a lot of fun. And I think Heartland did a good job in helping us get to that point. The part where I felt like I started falling apart was, the micromanaging. You can't put everybody in a box. Your personality is different from your personality, different from my personality. If we're all expected to be here, we're not gonna flourish
Right.
because we're just being kind of inhibited to be who we are and to manage how we think we should manage. And so for me, not being expected to have everybody hit these big numbers.
Sure.
And then on top of that, you're supposed to hit those same
Right,
numbers.
Right. You got your own number too. Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
where am I have if I'm supposed to be hiring, training, working numbers for people, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I felt like the company really went in that direction where they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. I had asked if I could, once I became a DM, I still had a lot of referrals that came into me, and it felt good giving them to people on the team.
Right.
But then you start adding up those numbers. You're like, man, I got a young family. I have a son. I need money too. And then I had asked if I could go back to being a TM, because as a TM, you guys know you can sell.
Yeah.
So manager at the time said, yeah, not a problem. So my focus, though, was always on my team. Like, what can I be doing to help them? I would sell as things came to me, but I wasn't really actively seeking, because my enjoyment at that point was really helping build people up. And my boss at the time had come to me and said, look, man, I really need you selling. Because if you're selling more, your team sells more, which is something a manager says when they don't really know how to sell. I'm like, okay. And so this was like maybe July. I need you to get your win.
Yes.
So July came. I'm like, and I explained, look, my focus, I'm trying to get all these people.
Yeah.
You keep pounding on me that so-and-so's not selling.
Right.
Here I'm trying to do that, but then I get dinged for it. So played the game, got my win July, August, September, October, November. Now December came. My wife was pregnant. She was having a C-section, so we knew when the date was, December 15th.
No excuse, Chad. No excuse.
Exactly.
Got to hit your numbers.
I told my boss ahead of time, look, after the 15th, I'm taking the month off to spend with my wife and baby.
Yeah.
No problem. So probably by like the 8th, 9th, 10th, I hit a pretty big number.
Yeah.
So I was like, cool, I feel good. Got that cushion. Had our daughter, no problems. Took off the rest of the month. Came back after the first week of January. Missed the number. Instead of hitting 6,000, I hit 5,000.
Yeah.
And I was immediately threatened to be demoted.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was the point where I'm like, all right, I am now strictly just a number here.
Yeah.
I've just hit the numbers you asked me to for a half a year straight. And instead of, there was never a congratulations, never, hey, I appreciate you coming through and doing what you said you would do. It was just, the thought process was, I think I'm going to demote you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, so I know you today, and I've known you for quite a while. I know you today as a leader that is super compassionate, and passionate to the point of like your team means everything to you. And they're, like you talked about earlier, that like hearing their stories and what they're able to accomplish is almost, more than a paycheck for you. And I love that. I love hearing that. But that's definitely not the examples you saw of your first leadership in this business. So did that help kind of mold you to that? Like, I don't want to be like that, or
100% correct.
Yeah.
It's easy when you see how people act. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that person feel how I probably felt
Right.
at the time.
Right.
And so you kind of look at different leaders and who do you like? Or even past teachers. Like again, school's never my thing, but I can absolutely remember a handful of teachers that made a difference in my life.
Yes.
And I remember how they made me feel. And so, I kind of bring that into my managing. And yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah. When someone's really bad at selling or really bad at managing, you want to be as opposite of that as you can.
Right.
Yeah.